Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Titans head coach Brian Callahan talked about the process of getting his dad, Bill Callahan, on his staff as an offensive line coach from the Browns.
It was a complicated process because it wasn't something that I had anticipated him in the moment, if that's what he wanted to do. I wasn't sure he would be contractually allowed to. And it was a process that we had to work through with the Browns organization, and thankfully they were really, kind is the wrong word. This isn't a kind business, but they were aware enough to know the uniqueness of the situation and allow it to continue to go down that road. So appreciative of that perspective from them and allowing it to happen. But it wasn't something that initially we thought was going to be the case, and it turned out that we were going to be able to make it work. And probably one of the coolest moments for me is being able to have that happen. It's been really fun to drive to work with him every day and do those things. It's not something I ever thought would work, truthfully. So to be here with him is a really, really awesome moment for me, both as a son and as a professional, because I know how much he can help us with his knowledge.
With that, let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, the reason I lead with that and play that is the Browns did the right thing by Bill Callahan. That's one of the reasons and one of the things that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have really done. That's why you get some of the free agents you get. That's why you get the Jim Schwartzes and the Bubba Ventrones. They're starting to develop the reputation as being a good organization.
Yeah, I mean, you treat people right or how you want to be treated. As he said, it's a tough business professionally, but you got to think Brian Callahan is in this business aspiring to be like his father, not knowing the dynamic, but most father-sons, if your son follows in your footsteps, you would think that somewhere they would cherish the opportunity to be together. And so when that question was posed, the Browns said, well, we can't deny that. And so good for them. I mean, yeah, you could take it to court or you could make a big deal because you have a contract, but you want to do what's right, in these situations. It wasn't like, he's going necessarily to a better team or anything at this point. It was the opportunity to work together, father and son. So they got a different dynamic. See how it works out. I mean, that's where if things go south, how does the son, fire his dad or whatever? But no, I just think it was the right thing to do, and good for the Browns.
All right, this is from Sportsnot, 2024 defensive rankings, offseason outlook for all 32 teams. So these are the top defensive rankings. They go Jets 1, Ravens 2, 49ers 3, Chiefs 4, Browns 5. Defensive needs, defensive line, edge, and safety, impending free agents, Za'Darius Smith, Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, Rodney McLeod, Sione Takitaki, and Anthony Walker. Some of those defenders will leave, depriving the Browns' defense of its depth, combined with late season regression, will give us some pause in 2024. Let's start with Za'Darius Smith. I know you've written an article about edge rusher analysis. Do you think he's coming back? And, all those defensive tackles, they need a couple of those, 2 or 3 of those guys back as well. But let's start with Smith. Do you think Za'Darius is coming back?
I don't know him well enough. He talked really once, I think, at Greenbrier, and he really wasn't available. What I'm told by all the players, they really liked it here and got along with Myles Garrett and the group and likes the way Jim Schwartz used him and so forth. But he restructured, when they traded for him, the Browns had to agree to restructure his contract to give him guaranteed money, but also to allow him to be a free agent after a year. So he is a free agent. He wanted to be a free agent. Will it be enough that he wants to come back, or will somebody else offer him on the open market? quite a bit of more money. I've been around this business long enough to realize that, especially when guys get in their 30s and somebody offers a lot more money somewhere else, they tend to follow the money. Some guys you see with the Eagles, Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham, might have taken a little less, but they wanted to finish their career with the Eagles. A guy like Smith now is moved around a little bit, Baltimore to Green Bay, Minnesota, now with the Browns. I don't compare him to Jadeveon Clowney, but I feel like Jadeveon Clowney was just pretty much year to year highest bidder. And I don't know what will happen with Smith. I do know this. Jim Schwartz was very complimentary of him all year when his sack production, I think he ended with 5.5, but a lot of them were at the end of the year, and it just seemed like he wasn't getting a lot of sacks. And that's when you heard sacks don't mean that much. It's how they affect the play. And they graded him out very high. And I just think he's a high priority. It's just going to be, are other teams interested, in him? If they really want him, they need to sign him before free agency. There's a fine line. We all know in the free agency, guys right out of the chute seem to get offered a lot more money. And then a lot of those guys they're still available, and they end up signing 1-year deals at the beginning of training camp with some team, waiting and waiting and waiting. So the Browns got him via trade. And so that to me, I still think, is if you can find trade partners, those are your best way to make sure they're on your team, as opposed to a guy wanting to, go to the highest bidder and then you get into a price war. So yeah, I would say they're going to try very hard to keep him, because I think Jim Schwartz is going to tell the front office, we really want this guy. But they did sign Okoro last year to a multi-year deal in free agency. Really, at the time, most of us thought to be the long-term answer opposite of Myles Garrett. And I think he showed a lot. Obviously got hurt at the end of the year, but you're much better having 3 of those guys as opposed to 2. Plus, Alex Wright came on, second-year guy, third-round pick a couple years ago, had like 5 sacks in the second half of the season, and it just depends on how high they are of him. But I think with the priority on the defensive line, you definitely want another veteran. Smith would be ideal, in my opinion. He'd be the top priority. And then on the inside, as you said, there's 3 of them in the rotation besides Dalvin Tomlinson that are free agents. I really think they need to get 2 of them back. Maurice Hurst has indicated he liked to stay, so I think they can keep him if they wish. And then it comes down to Shelby Harris. He was available at training camp last year because he's one of those 30-something guys that seem to be available every year. And then I don't know what they feel like with Jordan Elliott. They might try to do a short-term thing with him. He was in the last year of his deal, and he had, I think, $2.8 million guaranteed or deal. And I think they might even cut him, but they renegotiated, restructured, gave him some guaranteed before the season, and reduced his contract. So I really don't know what they think about him, but I think they'd be happy to bring him back, all 3 of the interior guys, because that team went from in the 20s to like 10th or 11th in the NFL in rush defense, dropped from 135 to 105. I know those numbers got escalated a little to the end of the year, but they were much, much improved, and you don't want to go back to where you were before. And I think Jim Schwartz is a reason those guys were brought in, maybe not exactly the names, but he had a big say in Andrew Berry saying, I need a good rotation of defensive linemen. So I think it's going to come down to money, as it always does. But they do have a big piece, as I wrote today, about Dalvin Tomlinson, because you have him under contract. It's now getting what I would think probably not so much a lot of long-term free agents, but 1-year pieces, because Siaki Ika was drafted in the 3rd round, but he didn't really play all year. He played a couple times. He had no tackles. So you can't just turn it over to him, in my opinion. You need to get a couple of those veterans that can step in and play right away and help with the run stopping.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now, I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about the offense. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
You might have expected all the games and all the excitement. And even though you couldn't see it right away, it's all right here. 5 games in 1. $22 million in prizes between $25 and $500 and a shot at $1 million grand prize. Golden Casino. A night's worth of excitement for just $10.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Couple things today again. One, why do you even give these guys airtime when they're talking about get rid of Stefanski and Barry? Obviously, they don't know football. That's a winning combo there. Number 2, Deshaun Watson is due to make an astronomical amount of money this year. And he either gives this team a hometown discount and restructure his contract. Let me have your opinion on that, too. Love you, brother. Be safe, you and the family. As always, good show, great show. I love you, man.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Fred, I would imagine Deshaun Watson's contract gets restructured. They'll probably give him money up front and kind of push it back salary cap wise. They have to do that probably with a couple to get enough salary cap space. And Andrew Berry said they have the flexibility to get the amount that they want.
I'm not a salary cap expert, but I've read, if you look on our site, the OBR.com, we have a writer who's from London or the United Kingdom named Jack Duffin, he was right on all last winter on the free agents and the salary and the restructure. And he really explains it. Yes, they definitely will restructure Deshaun Watson. What you have to remember is that the player is getting all his money. He's just getting it in the form of a signing bonus up front. He's getting $46 million a year over 5 years. That adds up to the $230 million guaranteed. And so he's going to get his money. They just, by restructuring it, can carry it over 5 years. So they've restructured it twice, and they can do it again this year. And I think the restructure amount of savings will be somewhere around 28 to 30 million, which will allow them to, have cap space and do what they've done in the past. So it's kind of like you put your money, on a credit card, and you don't have to pay it today. You have a month or you have some time, and you can pay that. Yeah, you're going to pay the money that you guaranteed to them, but you can spread it out with the salary cap. And so that's what they're doing, and they're pretty proficient in it. So it's not like, okay, now they have to pay him $63 million this year. They restructure it. He gets whatever he gets, and the difference somewhere it's around 28 to 30 million, I think, for this year that they will pick up in salary cap space.
So what do you think the Browns need to do to kind of unlock Watson? First of all, he's got to stay healthy. I realize that. But what do you think they need to do to get him to the quarterback they thought he was when they acquired him?
I really do think that it's nothing more than staying on the field. I mean, it was such a small sample size, but I've said it before. That third game, I thought he had turned the corner against the Titans. He looked good to me. And as it turned out, the Titans didn't have the greatest team, but he played well in that game. He threw for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. He really should have had over 329 yards and 3 touchdowns. They blew a whistle inadvertently, took away a touchdown and a 40-yard pass to Amari Cooper. But with that said, then we know he had the injury. He had to start and stop over the next month. Then it's hard to even gauge other than result. When you find out in that second half of the Ravens game, he was 14 of 14, led him in a comeback win over the Ravens on the road with a high ankle sprain and a broken bone in his throwing shoulder. I don't know what more you could expect from him. So I think if he'd have been healthy and played the rest of the year, I think he would have just got better and better. But with that said, I think they need to look at what he did with Houston. I'm sure they have, but what I remember when the Browns played them, I always remember him throwing the bomb to Will Fuller or some speedy receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. They were getting behind the Browns' backs, which wasn't hard to do back then, but it just seemed like when he stretched the field deep, good things happened, and then he could run and do the things he does. I just think that last year when he was playing, they didn't have that deep threat. Marquise Goodwin just never was on the field at the same time. And, they didn't use Elijah Moore in that fashion on the deep ball. We know Cooper can go deep, but he's not the burner. And we saw it with Joe Flacco. And I keep contending, okay, that this is no slight on Flacco, but anything that Flacco could have done, Deshaun Watson can do. He's got every bit of the arm Flacco does at 39, and he's got more mobility. If anything, he's just got to harness that and not put himself in harm's way. I mean, he plays the way he plays, but he has really been able to get away with it and not had major injuries to his shoulder like he did this year. So I just think, if anything, he's got to stay on the field. But one of the reasons I think they made this change from Van Pelt to Dorsey is to marry kind of what we saw with Flacco with Watson, kind of put him in there and put him in position like he did with Josh Allen and like he did with Cam Newton, and use that skill set because that's what attracted the Browns to him. He isn't a pure pocket passer, so use that element to your advantage. So I don't know if there's what the magic formula is, but I think that's why you brought in outside offensive voices, Deuce Staley, Tommy Rees, and of course Ken Dorsey, to look at it from a different angle from what they had looked at for the first 2 years Watson was here. I think they like Alex Van Pelt, but he had kind of shot whatever his views or his analysis or his input would be. You needed a fresh voice. You needed somebody from the outside, to run that off of Kevin Stefanski and try to put what Stefanski wants to do together with Dorsey and the other guys.
All right, before I let you go, wide receiver. Do the Browns have enough with Amari Cooper? Or do they need to add to that?
I think they definitely have to add. In my opinion, that's the top priority. You talked about the defense being maybe the fifth best. Well, hey, to me, that's more than enough. I thought if this defense just top 10, they'd be able to compete for a Super Bowl. But you need to get an explosive offense, and you need to have quarterback play at least of what you saw in the recent Super Bowl by Patrick Mahomes. But you get another wide receiver to go with Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper and David Njoku. There you have a wide open attack. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about a very good wide receiver that can take the top off and can really, pose to just give Watson all the weapons in the world in the passing game.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Thank you, Dave.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. He is the senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Kenny Roda from WHBC 1480 Sports Talk straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading, If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Kenny Roda from the Kenny and JT Show, News Talk 1480 WHBC. Kenny, appreciate the time. Let's get right after it. You saw the Chiefs. They are Super Bowl champs, trying to go for the three-peat next year. When you look at the Browns, how far away are they?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Because the Browns make the playoffs this year, get bounced in the first round. The Chiefs go back-to-back, third one in 5 years. Everybody's looking up at the Chiefs. So when you look at roster-wise, some of the talent on the Browns is better than the talent on the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Myles Garrett, by far, Defensive Player of the Year. I would take him over anybody they have on their defense. Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes stand out for the Chiefs on offense. But Nick Chubb, if he's healthy, he's a better running back than anybody that the Chiefs have. The offensive line, when healthy for the Browns, with the exception maybe of Jedrick Wills, I'm not a big fan, should have drafted Tristan Wirfs, but offensive line equivalent to that. The bottom line is this. We can talk about who they need to go out and sign in free agency, maybe trade for, maybe draft, but it all comes down to one player and one player only. Does Deshaun Watson get back to the 2020 Deshaun Watson that the Browns traded for? If he does, then they will challenge for the division championship and maybe play in an AFC championship. If he does not, David, they don't stand a chance. It comes down to Deshaun Watson. How healthy is he? And can he get back to that level of play? Because you and I were talking before we came on the air, and we looked at the Chiefs wide receivers and said, they're not very good. Well, guess what? Patrick Mahomes makes them better. So no matter who they go out and get, the Browns, can Deshaun Watson make those receivers better? And that's what it comes down to.
And, it's kind of ironic because the last time you saw Deshaun Watson on the field, he kind of was that quarterback against the Ravens in the second half. Didn't look great in the first half, but game on the line, he played really well, and then out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, when he go in with a foot injury and comes out with a rib injury and he's done for the year, a shoulder injury. It never ceases to amaze me, the OIC factor, only in Cleveland, right? Somebody goes in for an ankle injury and they separate their shoulder. A guy goes in for a shoulder injury and, busted up ribs. So that was a tough blow. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year, did a hell of a job using 5 different starting quarterbacks. 4 of them won games. Joe Flacco, Comeback Player of the Year. You can debate that if you want. Bottom line is he played well in the regular season, horrible in the postseason for the Browns. So, you look at this, and Deshaun Watson gave us a glimpse, right, in that game against Baltimore. I don't think he missed a pass in the second half and leads them to a victory over a team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC. So it's there, but we always talk about what's the best ability. It's availability. Can he be available for all 17 games? He's played 12 in 2 years with the Browns. He's 8-4 as a starter. That's good. What's not good is the games he didn't play. So he needs to get healthy and be there all 17 games. And then on top of all that, play like he did against the Ravens.
So when you look at this roster as a whole, what jumps out to you as needing to be upgraded? Obviously, they need elite quarterback play if they're going to get where they want to go. What areas of the roster need to be upgraded?
As I look at this team right now, I think their biggest weakness is a second wide receiver, right? We were talking about Marquise Goodwin, Elijah Moore. Those guys did not live up to expectations. Amari Cooper, outstanding when healthy, okay? He's a true number 1. I'd take him over any wide receiver that the Kansas City Chiefs have right now. Can you pair him up with somebody? Free agency, T. Higgins is the biggest name out there. Are the Bengals going to let him go? If they do, what's it going to cost you to get him? Do the Browns have that money? Boy, you talk about pairing somebody up, T. Higgins and Amari Cooper, it's going to make Deshaun Watson better or vice versa. So I think that's the biggest need for them. If it's not T. Higgins, we're looking at Curtis Samuel, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, does Tampa Bay let him go? I don't think so, especially if they're going to bring back Baker Mayfield, former Browns quarterback. They teamed up for 13 touchdown passes this past year. Tyler Boyd, Gabe Davis, some names to look at in free agency. And I'll be honest, I haven't explored the draft market yet for wide receivers. That may be the way they go to try and bring in a number 2 receiver with that first pick they have in the second round. So for me, wide receivers, the biggest need. I mentioned Jed Wills. I'm not a fan. DeJuan Jones, great find in the draft last year. Conklin, is he going to be able to come back and play this year? Can he stay healthy? What's the best ability? Availability. He doesn't seem to always be available. So right tackle, left tackle is an area. They have 3 guys to pick from unless they want to upgrade that via trade or free agency. So on offense, those are the 2 areas I would look at. I guess I'm counting on Nick Chubb coming back, and even a 70% Nick Chubb is better than 100% of a lot of other running backs. Let's hope that's the case after that horrible knee injury. Defensively, bookend for Myles Garrett. Can you get somebody else to rush the passer to help the defensive player of the year? Linebacker, I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah really stepped his game up this year, and he is one of the key players on that defense. But another linebacker would be nice for that defense as well.
All right, this from the Factory of Sadness. 3 Browns most likely to be traded this offseason. Number 1, Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle. They did pick up the 5th-year option, making about average for a left tackle. Number 2, Nick Chubb has the big number, but I honestly don't see that happening. Number 3, Elijah Moore, wide receiver that they acquired in a trade. Kenny, when you look at those, I don't see them trading Nick Chubb. I don't know that anybody would give them much for Elijah Moore. Jedrick Wills is an intriguing one because if you think Conklin can come back and you think you can flip DeJuan Jones over to left tackle, you might get, a 3rd, a 4th for Jedrick Wills.
I would shoot for a 2nd and make it sound like he's on the verge of becoming an all-pro. Paul DePodesta, Andrew Berry worked their magic. But I don't know if, I don't know if there's enough of a market out there for a Jed Wills. A lot of teams would be wondering, okay, why do you want to get rid of a first-round pick? Well, we've got depth. That's the answer I would give if I were Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. Jed Wills, again, maybe you move him to right tackle. Maybe DeJuan Jones becomes the starting left tackle, and Conklin is, even though you're paying him a lot of money, he's an insurance policy if either of those guys go down. That might be something you explore. But as far as I can't see them trading Nick Chubb, maybe restructuring his contract to help them out. That's a possibility. I can't see them trading Nick Chubb. Like I said, he gives them, if healthy, the best running back along with Christian McCaffrey in the entire National Football League.
All right, before we go to break, this is from BrownsWire.com. This is a guy that's a free agent. Haven't talked about him. Calvin Ridley could be the missing piece to the Browns' passing game. This is from BrownsWire. Ridley, elite-level speed the team needs and has lacked a guy who runs in the low 4.4s. Ridley has second 1,000-yard receiving season this past year with the Jaguars. Average depth of target, 13.9 yards last season. I think he's 29, didn't play for a couple of years. One was the gambling issue. One was he kind of sat out. And he's an intriguing guy. That name would be an interesting number 2, I think. What are your thoughts about Ridley?
I would consider it because it shouldn't cost you too much, right? If you're looking for something as a bargain, somebody to take a swing on, you might miss, but if you connect, you hit a double, a triple, a home run, considering how much you need another wide receiver on this team, do their due diligence, check into where he's at mentally, physically, check his gambling accounts to make sure he's not wagering on anything like everybody is able to do these days by just picking up their phone like this and placing a wager, right? So is somebody definitely to kick the tires on.
Kenny Roda and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Kenny Roda from the Kenny and JT Show on News Talk 1480 WHBC. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Because everybody's talking about, revamping the wide receiver room. I think the one wide receiver that we need to go get in the 2024 draft is Trayshawn Holden. I feel like he's really, really underrated. I feel like he's not talked about. He's an Alabama transfer, and I think with his size and his speed, because when he's in space, he's almost unstoppable, it seems like. If we get him, put him with Amari Cooper, and in my mind, I'm thinking we can possibly trade for Brandon Aiyuk, and then we have Elijah Moore in the mix, then you have Cedric Tillman. Now your wide receiver core is almost unstoppable. You have multiple weapons for Deshaun, and then nobody will be able to stop us. And I believe that Andrew Berry and the scouting department really need to look at Trayshawn because his skill set really does match well with Amari Cooper.
And not a bad idea, but Holden has announced via Twitter he's going to be returning to Oregon for the 2024 season. Kenny, Aiyuk is an interesting one because the Niners are going to run into the trouble where, they're going to have to pay McCaffrey. Bosa will be coming up. They got a number of guys that they're going to have to pay. Aiyuk is somebody I'm intrigued by. I wonder what it would cost.
Yeah, that's the question. What do you have to give up, and what's his salary? Don't know off the top of my head. How does that fit into your salary cap situation there? By the way, the Buckeyes are going to have their hands full with Holden. They play at Oregon this year, so we'll keep an eye on that when they go head-to-head, as they'll be the top two teams in the Big Ten this year. But some of the other guys, I was just looking it up during the break there. Malik Neighbors from LSU, Keon Coleman, FSU, Rome Odunze from Washington. Those are the top receivers, along with the top receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft. But a couple of kids from Texas, I think, came out this year that the Browns probably will look at in, I think it's Mitchell is one of the receivers, and Xavier Worth is the other from Texas, and Devontae Walker from UNC. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 7 receivers right there that you would think maybe one of them would be available to them in that second round. So trades might be the best way for the Browns to address that if they don't feel there's a receiver worthy of taking in that second round. And Aiyuk, if indeed he is on the trade block, you have to pick up the phone and call San Fran to see what they're asking for.
Yeah, he's in his rookie fifth-year option, so he's going to be looking for a contract next year. But Amari Cooper comes off the books, and that fits with the timeline. All right, this one's from the 33rdteam.com. Every team's biggest need this offseason. For the Browns, they go edge rusher along your lines. Myles Garrett had arguably the best season of his career, 2023. Browns could still use more help opposite him. Zadarius Smith slated to be a free agent. Browns would love for him to return. If he doesn't, Cleveland needs another pass rusher who can be stout against the run on early downs. They also need a guy that can take some of the double teams, or at least if you're going to double team Myles Garrett, make the offense pay.
Exactly, and that's the area. Jadeveon Clowney, a couple of years ago, 1 year was good, 1 year wasn't. Zadarius, I would bring him back. I want to try and keep a lot of the guys on that defensive line together for another year under Jim Schwartz's tutelage, along with Myles Garrett, but I want to add one more. I need that, and I don't know who it is, David, all right? I haven't looked at the free agent defensive ends that might be available out there, or somebody that's available via trade. But that is definitely something I'm exploring. If I can do 2 things and only 2 things for the Browns this offseason, I'm getting me a number 2 receiver that could maybe become your number 1 next year, right? If you sign a top name wide receiver in free agency and get rid of Cooper next year as he's getting up there in age. And also another pass rusher. As we saw, defense still wins championships, right? Offense is great. 25-22 was the final score, and that was in overtime in the Super Bowl this year. So you need your defense to not only play well at home, which it did this year, but also play well on the road, which it was horrendous. And we saw what happened in the playoff game at Houston. So I need to upgrade that pass rush with a second legitimate somebody that keeps offensive coordinators up at night wondering how to attack that 1-2 punch of Myles Garrett and whoever that other defensive end would be.
All right, this is kind of interesting, a little fun. This is from CBSSports.com. The perfect Taylor Swift song for all 32 NFL teams, and it's actually a lyric from a song. The lyric, honey, I rose up from the dead, I do it all the time. The song, look what you made me do. The rationale, they climbed out of decades of constant tragedy to become a respectable NFL franchise with 2 playoff berths in 4 seasons under Coach Kevin Stefanski, most recent one, with a quarterback who rose from the dead to boot. That is some really good work by CBS Sports coming up with that lyric from that song for the Browns.
As if we didn't have enough Taylor Swift references right through the Super Bowl. Here we are a few days after it, and we're tying it into the Cleveland. Although I did see Bernie Kosar earlier this year, right, hanging out with Taylor Swift in a suite, and we saw CeCe Sabathia this past weekend, I think it was, at the Super Bowl. So Kevin Stefanski, 2 for 4, batting .500 as far as Coach of the Year. Guess what? You have the Coach of the Year, the Defensive Player of the Year, the Comeback Player of the Year, and the Assistant Coach of the Year.
Yep.
Right? So you've got 4 awards that you just picked up at the NFL Honors. You better challenge next year for the AFC Championship, right? I mean, if you've got a coach who is respected throughout the league like that, but struggles maybe in big games to get it done, he's got to find a way to step his game up, right? He goes out and get Ken Dorsey as his offensive coordinator now. Will Dorsey actually have input into the play calls, or will Stefanski continue to be the guy calling the plays? Ryan Day is giving up the play calling duty at Ohio State to focus more on being a head coach and managing the overall game. So that's something to keep an eye on this year. Jim Schwartz, as I just mentioned, great at home, terrible on the road. That's the next step for that defense, and that's his challenge. Myles Garrett, can he put back-to-back years together like that? You could have made a case for T.J. Watt as the Defensive Player of the Year. He's already won that, but he backed it up. What do you have, 19 sacks this year? So that's where Myles Garrett now needs to really take his game to the next level as well, stacking them, as they like to say, back-to-back years together, but he does need some help. And I don't know about you, David. Do you think they even consider bringing back Joe Flacco, or would that cause a rift in the locker room if Deshaun Watson comes back, starts, they're 1-3, hey, play Flacco, look what he did for us last year? Do you want that dynamic in the locker room, or do you think they could push their egos to the side and say that's what makes us a better football team?
You know what? They need a backup. You need a backup quarterback that you can win with, without question. And along those lines, look at the division. I mean, this is AFC North was the first division since like 1935. Couldn't even tell you what the divisions were back then that had everybody with a winning record. And you look at the quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. Talk is the Steelers are interested in acquiring Justin Fields. It's starting to heat up. Viewers of this show, Kenny, know I think that would be a good move for the Steelers, and I hope they don't make it. Take a listen to Louis Riddick on Get Up and how he thinks Fields would fit in to the Steelers.
I like him a lot. Look, I think of the effect that Arthur Smith had on Ryan Tannehill when Ryan Tannehill eventually took over for Marcus Mariota when they were down in Tennessee and Arthur was calling plays down there. The play-action game with Justin under center on first and second down with the dynamic duo that they have at the running back position right there with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, it is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. With the weapons with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth, are you kidding? With Justin, now that doesn't mean you have to park him under center all the time. They'll put him in gun. Mike wants to be a very multiple type of offense. But I think as far as letting the run game supplement what he can do as far as being a downfield play action pass oriented type of thrower, and then having design runs put in there for him, especially in the red area. Do you remember how much of a problem Ryan Tannehill was in the red area as a runner thrower? Just think of the possibilities here with a guy who is infinitely more talented naturally than Ryan Tannehill, that being Justin Fields. Man, look, you know I don't want to like ever put anybody in front of my boy Kenny Pickett because Kenny's my guy. He's my guy. But Justin Fields is one of those dudes who I'd be like, might have to put him in front of you, Kenny. might have to go ahead and work with this because Justin, in that offense, it would work.
Kenny, can you imagine Lamar? I think Justin Fields is going to be a really good quarterback for somebody. Joe Burrow. I mean, the quarterbacks in this division, if that does in fact happen, would be ridiculous.
He would still be the worst quarterback in the division, okay? 40 touchdown passes, 30 interceptions. He's shown some promise, and maybe he just needs a new team, a new offense with those weapons that were talked about right there in Pittsburgh. He would be an upgrade definitely over Kenny. Kenny Pickett was a wasted draft pick. Kenny Pickett reminds me of Colt McCoy, right? He's a backup quarterback for 12, 15 years in the league if he wants to play. He's not a starter in this league, and the Steelers are finding that out the hard way. So Justin Fields, would he be a major upgrade? No, not a major upgrade, but he would be an upgrade. And bringing in Arthur Smith, that's an upgrade over their offensive coordinators that they've used over the last couple of years. Canada's gone, and whoever they put in his place last year to finish the season. So it would make the Steelers a better offense, but how much better, I'm not sure. Let's see if Justin Fields can take that next step.
Kenny Roda, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Kenny.
Anytime, David. Enjoyed it.
All right, Kenny Roda, make sure you check him out. The Kenny JT Show, News Talk, 1480 WHBC. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead. Stay with us.
You might have expected all the games and all the excitement. And even though you couldn't see it right away, it's all right here. 5 games in one. $22 million in prizes between $25 and $500, and a shot at $1 million grand prize. Golden Casino, a night's worth of excitement for just $10.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Brian Windhorst, Mark Spears, national writers, talk about the job J.B. Bickerstaff has done with the Cavs after that tough start. This from the Hoops Collective.
We got to start talking about J.B. Bickerstaff for Coach of the Year.
Yes.
I think
the guy who was under heat a lot of this year.
Exactly. He's doing an incredible job.
Guys, he almost got fired. Say what you want. I mean, you know, they can debate about it, and you can debate the word almost, and they can deny it or whatever. J.B. Bickerstaff was on a hot bleep seat. And if he had had a bad few days at the wrong time, he'd have probably gotten fired.
Yeah.
So, and to rebound from that situation, to have this team playing brilliant basketball, I mean, you just watch them. And I agree, February ain't May, okay? And they got a blemish on that resume from the way they played in the playoffs last year, and it was not a shining performance by J.B. Bickerstaff amongst the failures in that postseason. But my God, Spears, you are so right in bringing that up.
Yeah, and he's done a lot, opening up their offense and keeping an elite, defensive approach.
Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, when I see that and hear that, the thought comes to this team plays nothing at all like it did a season ago.
Yeah, really, even going back to the start of the season, they had a lot of injuries to overcome. Jared Allen was out. Garland and Mitchell were missing time there early in November. And then, of course, you had the huge, long injuries to Garland and Mobley. But you talk about last season, particularly the playoffs, they're much more physical, playing a much more physical brand of basketball, which was a point of emphasis last year, in the offseason with J.B. Bickerstaff and the coaching staff and the front office was, we have to learn from that playoff series against the Knicks and be more physical and body up people more, be even better defensively. And all those things have happened. But on top of that, as we heard Mark Spears say, the offense has really just been clicking, aside from the loss to Philadelphia the other night. Even that, offensively, they've looked great. They've been sharing the ball, and nobody's been selfish, or nobody's forcing anything. That loss came down to defense. But really the big picture, you're talking about 17-2, their record since early January, and you absolutely have to give JB Bickerstaff a whole lot of credit in that kind of surge, because he's really convinced the guys, you know what, we're going to be more successful as a unit as opposed to one or two guys scoring 20 or 25, 30 points.
Any concern at all about that loss to the 76ers? I mean, you could look at it and say, boy, they were due. If you win 15 out of 16, you're due for a game that isn't great.
Yeah, no concern there. I think that maybe be a little bit of a concern if you lose to Chicago at home in the final game before the All-Star break. Then you've lost 2 in a row, and it's like, all right, clearly these guys are ready for a break. But I think, you bounce back against Chicago. You continue to play the way you've been playing for the majority of your games, as you said, 15-16. You're going to be just fine. So, that game to me was, they were just outworked most of the game. Philly didn't have Joel Embiid. They didn't have starting forward Tobias Harris. And the other guys were getting an opportunity. Reputed Cavs killer Buddy Hield, and one of the other guys that always kills him is Kelly Oubre, who had a big night that night too. And Tyrese Maxey, of course, has big nights all the time. So I think that the Cavs, for the majority of 3 quarters, were outworked in that game, and that's just a habit you want to avoid. But you probably were a little bit overconfident coming into that game, having won 9 straight against a shorthanded Philly team. So that's typical in the NBA. Those things can happen. You just can't make a habit of it.
As you mentioned, they wrap up the pre-All-Star part of the schedule tonight. They'll host the Bulls. They've won 6 straight against the Bulls. But take a look at this. The Cavs are the second-ranked defensive-rated team in the NBA, and they're in the top 11 in opponents' points per game, second. Opponents' field goals, 4th, and opponents' three-point field goals, 11th. Again, that wasn't there early in the year, so they got back to what they did so well last season with some new guys as well.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, that kind of starts with Jared Allen, who was out early in the season. It took him a little bit to get into a rhythm, and he's been not only great defensively, but in my opinion, the stretch here for the last 6 weeks or so, better than he's ever been at the offensive end. He's scoring points. And the great thing about Jared Allen is, when it comes to offense, is you don't need to, he's not going to force anything. He doesn't really need the basketball a whole lot. He's kind of scoring off pick and rolls and rebounds. But as far as defense, yeah, that's been something that's been amazingly impressive over the past, since the start of the new year, since the start of 2024. You've got Donovan Mitchell stepping in passing lanes, getting steals, Allen and Mobley protecting the basket, Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro and Karis LeVert, and even Max Strus. All of those guys have been kind of the unsung defenders on this team and have really played a huge role in that. Those guys, other than LeVert, aren't really scoring a lot, not at least not in the 20s, but they're making such a huge difference when it comes to defending the wing position. And today's NBA, the wing position really is the one that you really need to shut down. So they've been doing a great job on that. I frankly, and this is going to surprise some people, but I've been impressed with Darius Garland's defense since he came back from his broken jaw. He's really been getting after it. Darius isn't a great natural individual defender, but his effort has really been there, and he's made himself from, frankly, a bad defender or defensive liability to a guy that you can, you don't have to worry about because he's making the effort. And that's really been an impressive, not just part of Garland's game, but really, again, going back to JB Bickerstaff, really pushing these guys to defend, because that's what you're going to have to do to win a playoff series.
Has Okoro taken that next step? When I watch him, he's always been pretty good defensively. I think he's gotten even a little better. And now you better pay attention to him on the offensive end. I'm not saying he's going to light it up, but if you ignore him, he will make you pay now.
That's just it. Defensively, yes, I think he's better this year than he's ever been. and he's always been pretty good, but he's really seems to have embraced that role. And he's just, it's just natural progression of playing more NBA games now in year number 4. So I think that's helped. The experience has helped defensively. I was always, I'll be honest, iffy on Okoro before this season. This year, totally sold on him for the reasons you mentioned. Really strong wing defender, really gets after it, and will guard, everyone from opposing small forward shooting guards to point guards. I've seen him do a real number on Damian Lillard of the Milwaukee Bucks in the past. So, Okoro's really been, to me, a guy who's lifted his game in the ways that they need it. And like you said, he's become a bigger threat offensively. He's not a guy who's going to force anything or demand the basketball or try to go one-on-one. But when he gets the ball in a situation where he's able to score, before it was always an iffy proposition, now he's able to knock down those shots and create and, get to the line and score underneath. He's really good on the break. So, yeah, big improvements as far as I'm concerned all the way around from Isaac Okoro.
All right, before we go to break, some news from the Cavs. They're going to sign two-way guard Craig Porter to a new 4-year deal. 23-year-old undrafted guard, averaging 6.5 points, 2.8 assists as part of the Cavs' rotation as a rookie. And Sam, again, this is a guy whose minutes kind of have gone away with Garland coming back and Mobley coming back. But he was a guy you looked and you saw and you're like, all right, they got a guy that can play in the NBA. And so I'm sure they got him on a really good team-friendly deal, and he's a depth piece.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He hasn't played in 7 of the last 10 games, and that's okay. What the purpose of having depth in a player like Porter Jr., who emerged really from nowhere, undrafted out of Wichita State, signed to a 2-way deal initially. The great thing about having a guy like that is he has proven already, and this is the nice thing about having depth. It's not we're going to play 12 guys every game. It's injuries occur, matchup issues occur, other things that can happen where all of a sudden we need Craig Porter Jr. to step in and play for either Mitchell or Garland or Karis LeVert, when the time is right, and he's proven capable of that. That's the nice thing about having depth is it's not that he's going to play every game. He may not play most nights, but when the time comes, here's a kid who's proven already that he can step into the role when needed and provide that, lift that they might need at some point. So that's the great thing about having depth, and that's why he was rewarded, because he's shown that he can do that. And guess what? We will see him again at some point this season in meaningful minutes. That's just the way things go. And that's the good news is, again, here's a guy now playing on a new contract, more confident, and, the team showing that they believe in it.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue to talk Cavs. Are they legitimate championship contenders? Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Brian Windhorst on if the Cavs should be worried about losing Donovan Mitchell to the Lakers in the offseason.
When the Cavs traded for him, they knew that the moment of truth would happen in the summer of 2024. That they had 2 seasons before they came to Donovan and said, would you like to extend your contract? And either he does or stress. Okay? Every star player who becomes available, the Lakers go after. Every star player that becomes available, the Miami Heat go after. Donovan Mitchell is headed for a contract situation. The Cavs will either have a celebration or they will have stress, and the big markets that are the glamour markets hunt star players.
So, Sam, the question is, how big of a concern is it with Donovan Mitchell? Obviously, he's the best player on their team.
Yeah. I'm not getting the sense that there's any concern right now. Brian is right. Every time that a star player becomes available, or usually before he becomes available, the Lakers and the Heat are linked to him, whoever that player may be. I think if Donovan Mitchell were to leave and not want to re-sign with the Cavs, to me at this point, that would be a stunner. I think that he would. I certainly don't think. I'm getting a real sense from around the NBA that he does not want to go to LA and become the third fiddle to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I just get the sense, and other people are, that know a little bit more, are saying that no, he's not going to want to do that and become their new Russell Westbrook, because we all saw how that went. I think that he's probably more inclined to extend with the Cavs. I think if he were to leave the Cavs at some point, it would want to be, his thing would be New York, where he's from. And, I'm getting the sense that Donovan Mitchell and his camp believe, the New York Knicks are always going to be there. If you want to play for them at some point, they'll certainly be there. The other thing is the Knicks were one of the teams when Garland and Mobley went out and teams started calling to see if Donovan Mitchell was available. And of course, Kobe Altman basically hung up the phone on him. But when teams called, one of those teams was not the New York Knicks. So there's that too. Will the Knicks actually even bother to pursue him? I think his best option is going to be remaining in Cleveland. Obviously, it's hard to leave a team that's as hot as they are right now. A lot of it's going to come down to what happens in the postseason. But I really believe that Donovan Mitchell is going to extend in Cleveland. Those other teams are going to come after Miami, Lakers. Brian Windhorst is right. But I get the sense that just because a team comes after you doesn't mean you go there. It's just, of course, everybody else around the league is interested in Donovan Mitchell. But I think that his best opportunity moving forward, I think that he will find is in Cleveland, at least for the 4 years after his contract is up.
And they can offer him more money than somebody who's coming in as well, correct?
Without question. They could offer him considerably more than a team that's trying to sign him, particularly a team like the Lakers that, with LeBron James having a big contract option coming up in the offseason, Anthony Davis's deal. The Lakers have a lot of money tied up, so they would really have to get creative to get somebody like a Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young from Atlanta, who they've been linked to. They'd have to get creative financially, and the NBA new collective bargaining agreement has made that a whole lot tougher, too, which works in the Cavs' favor there as well when it comes to Donovan Mitchell.
All right, so the question is, Cavs are currently second in the Eastern Conference. Celtics are first, and they have the best record in basketball by quite a bit. Cavs are right in there with the top team in the West, the Timberwolves. Are they legitimate championship contenders? I know they have to win a playoff series, but this team is different. I mean, Yang is more physical. Strus is more physical. The guys they have added bring a physicality that was lacking last year.
Yeah, and all that considered, Dave, they also have a year of playoff experience in there too. So I think that helped them. They learned some tough lessons against the Knicks. And I think that, granted it's just a regular season, but they're showing right now that, yeah, they learned a lot from that. They're not as reliant on Donovan Mitchell as they were last season either. We saw the Knicks series. They just took Tom Thibodeau, the Knicks coach, just took Donovan Mitchell right out of the series. They're not as reliant on Donovan Mitchell. They're playing more team basketball. It's nice to have Donovan Mitchell in case everything else goes kaput. Then you have a star who can get it done. But why not? Why not a championship contender? The Miami Heat advanced to the finals last year as the number 8 seed. I foresee the Cavs, they look to me a lot like that Heat team in the sense that, hey, anything's possible. They could lose in the first round. It wouldn't shock me. It'd be disappointing and surprising. And they could get all the way to the finals and it wouldn't shock me. So right now, I think anything truly is possible with this team. And I'm leaning way toward a positive and potentially deep playoff run with it.
So I know you got some big news. You're going to have a show on Facebook, 330 to go Facebook page. Take us through that, when it's going to be, how people can find it.
Yeah, it's going to be every Thursday night. I'll basically just be sitting here doing this. Only I don't think I'll have you there, Dave, unless I have you on as a guest at some point. But it'll be an hour-long show every Thursday, 6 o'clock Eastern. And I will have some guests, and I'll just be talking Cavs and NBA and all the latest around the league and in Cleveland pro basketball. 330 to go has really become a big kind of source for news in the 330 area code over the last year. So I'm really excited about it, and be doing that for as long as they'll have me. And we start Thursday night, which is 2 nights from now.
All right.
So very excited about that.
All right. Again, Thursday nights at 6, 330 to go Facebook page. Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, as always. Great stuff on the Cavs and the entire NBA. Make sure you check him out, 330 to go, Thursday nights at 6. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.